Okay, welcome everybody. Tonight I'd like to, my intention is to try to make a shorter lecture and to have more time for the meditation. So my intention tonight is to try to cover two main subjects, main points I should say, but in covering those two main points, because we're working so deeply in the material of quantum navigation, it requires laying down a little bit of understanding first, so we can get to that point. So this is about quantum navigation, and so this is about moving into the quantum. And I want to talk about some of the layers in the quantum, and one specific area inside of the quantum, which is referred to by a very close associate on other planes named Sasha as the pain band. And the materials working with the quantum navigation process has us revisiting a lot of our stories, pains, traumas, and so on, as you know. And so going through the pain band means we revisit this area. So I think if we're revisiting it, there's opportunities to get hung up in the pain band, to get confused in the pain band, to trip and fall and cling to what you experience inside of the pain band. So all the work that we've been doing over this time has been really helpful in disassembling the stories and how the stories lead to the belief systems, and how the belief systems are used by our own inner tyrant. So learning this association and getting familiar with it enables us to go through the pain band without getting tripped up. You feel it, you see it, you flag it, you own it, and you move through it. So this is one of the areas I want to get into tonight, is the area of the pain band. And so it's going to require me going over some material. And that material is, first of all, we're pre-contextualized to comfort. We're pre-contextualized to ease, meaning it's counterintuitive to go towards the pain and to want to be around pain or traumatic situations, conditions. And as we've been seeing through this work, that's the pathway. Okay? So life kind of tends to put us through periods, I'm going to draw a high note here, of pleasure, and then we have periods of pain, like a sine wave. And then once again, the good stuff comes along, this too shall pass, and once again you go back into experiencing some challenges. Okay? It is natural tendency then to try to stay, try to garner as many good experiences as possible and try to seek staying inside of the pleasure area or the ease and comfort area, and try to resist and run away from that which challenges us or that which exposes our pain and our wounds. Okay. But if we're going to be going back and forth through the pain band, then it's important to understand that our stories really aren't what we thought they were. Our foundations of belief are not what we thought they were. we've identified ourselves, we've created a patchwork quilt of identity, history, and personality. And it's all based on our experiences, being in this physical body, being in this physical plane, and mostly trying to garner our experiences in the pleasurable realm. All right, so if we're going to go into the quantum, we need to understand a few elements. And inside of the quantum, everything is frequency. Everything is waves and patterns. Even our consciousness is based on frequency. So our brainwave state for remaining fixed here in this reality, in the 3D, is beta. We call that beta brainwave frequency. Helps in concentration and 3D. So that waveform representation, it is a metaphor, and this is symbolic, but it's very dissonant. So beta brainwave frequency is designed to separate out all the frequencies that are out there and get you to focus just on this linear reality so that you have focus. You can concentrate on the 3D. And so that frequency, 13 to 40 hertz, sets the pace of the frames of the reality, like a movie picture. The movie frames are moving one at a time in a flow at a certain speed, and it gives it a fluidity to all the motions in 3D. And so beta helps us concentrate on that frequency and helps us feel comfortable and centered, safe and secure inside of this reality. Now, there are other frequencies, and beta frequency actually takes a lot of energy to keep your concentration on the right here, the here and now. If we relax that frequency, we naturally tune to higher frequencies. So the more we relax, the more we move into like alpha, relaxation, creativity, entry into meditation, and that waveform is symmetrical. Then we can move into delta, another brainwave frequency that's a little slower, more calm, ease, moves into the subconscious, intuitive, healing. It's more of an elongated waveform. Remember, these waves are representations, so these are symbolic. Then theta, heightened receptivity, inspiration, beyond boundaries. And then you can go into gamma. Okay. So moving into the quantum, and I want to bring your attention to just this first area of the graphic here. And this is taken, this is an adaptation of someone I care for very much, who channels the entity Sasha, and her portrayal of the movements into the quantum. And as she was describing the reality frames, like I was talking about earlier, the reality moves at a certain frequency, and so when we're in our beta brainwave, it's hard to see the little pauses in between the fluctuations. If we relaxed enough, we could see the fluorescent lights, even incandescent lights. If you relaxed enough, you can see the pauses in between the cycling of the frequency of the light. So if you relaxed enough, through the brainwave states, alpha, delta, theta, and gamma, well then you can access moving your consciousness through the pauses up into the quantum. Make sense? Nice and clear? All right. So as you move into the quantum, you start to notice that there is a layer moving into the quantum moving and relaxing through the brainwave states, you start to feel the reality around you becomes more supportive, more embracing, and that becomes almost jelly-like. So that jelly-like energy supporting you starts to work on the heart, the emotions, even the mind, relaxing it even more. And so inside of that state, it starts to expose where we hold emotional and psychological tensions inside your being. Not just inside of the body, but also inside of your being. And so as you're moving up through the jelly band in frequency, relaxing, all of a sudden, you're in these great states and you start to expose old wounds, old pains, old belief systems. And these are the things that tend to throw us right out of the reality, throw us out of the quantum, throw us out of superposition into entanglement. So as we come back into the re-experiencing that pain band, all of our tensions, emotional charges, wounds, fears, psychological charges, they all reveal themselves. So this gives us an opportunity to focus on what we have that's keeping our splits of our dualities inside of us. It keeps ourselves resisting what we don't wish to feel, because we think that's not a part of us. But as we've been working through the quantum material, all dualities are a part of us. So, the pain band is important because it exposes the steps and stages of disassociation we took in separating our unconscious nature from our conscious nature. So when we came from no body, no bodies, we're beingness, consciousness, integrated dualities. When we came down into 3D, we passed this pain barrier when the consciousness separated from the unconscious self. So right at that separation, it started taking on pains. So you started moving your dualities apart. I am not this. I'm dissociated from these bad feelings. I don't want that. I'm pushing it away. So all our dualities start unzipping because we went unconscious. Okay? So I want to present that because that's really important to understand. We came through a process of dissociating. Through the pain band is where we seemingly unzipped our dualities and separated from them. So, we've been learning over the course of this. You remember this graphic. Our polarized psychological interpretations meet up with our polarized emotional interpretations, and they feed each other. The feeding cycle of addictive stories and beliefs. And from our core fears, we interpreted the feelings, created stories about them. Those stories became the foundation of our beliefs, and then we had to play them out. This is before we had bodies. This is us in the void with no bodies yet, no characters. But once we started making up all these stories, then we had to create characters to portray them so that we can work through them. We can awaken to see what we're doing to ourselves. So as we created trauma and abuse. We went to bullying, codependence, and it keeps going on and on and on. So the way back is going back through these, seeing the depths below these, all the way to the core fears. Okay, that's what we've been working on. Now in the last night, August 24th, the last Storm Wisdom evening, I think I showed you guys this graphic. I didn't. Oh. Okay.
Like 2 weeks old. It's not.
Now, what I've been sharing with you, I'm not getting out of a book. I'm getting out of going deep into my own wounds, going into my own fears, going into my own traumas, and finding there is no roadmap. Nobody's made a roadmap. So I've had to go into here thousands of times, taking what I could learn and move into the depths of my unconscious. So we saw in earlier drawings, we'll get back to this in just a second. Now, I've spoken to you before about Purusha and Prakriti, how important that is to understand. And Purusha is consciousness, and the best way to portray consciousness is with a sphere, but the sphere has no boundaries, but we have to use something, so we have to create a circle to represent a sphere. And so this consciousness, which never ends in any direction, is us. And if we were to create a symbol of the duality, we could say, by putting a line through here and go, here's the dualities, but they're not separated. In this Purusha state, they're not separated. However, if you were to twist the top one way and the bottom another way, like a balloon, then you would have a separation. And when Purusha, consciousness, decided, for whatever reason, I wonder what it would be like not to know myself, then it created the void, Prakriti. So in creating the void, this is the unconsciousness. Okay. So in the unconsciousness, there's an apparent separation. The first dissociation. The separation between consciousness and unconsciousness. So who feels the separation? The unconscious one. The conscious one always stayed there. So it was always connected. So at that moment of the first dissociation, somebody felt abandonment and betrayed by consciousness. And that abandonment and betrayal creates a whole lot of emotions. This graphic here is a symbol. If I were to draw this, and here's the top part of the balloon. Here's in the unconsciousness. So the first dissociation is, you left me. No, I didn't. All right. So from this abandonment and betrayal, one of the first emotions that come up is guiltiness. I must have done something so bad that my connection to everything left me. Creator left me. I've been abandoned and betrayed. So there's rage there. there's guiltiness, but it descends into powerlessness, worthlessness, neediness, helplessness, hopelessness. There's 6 major roots. And remember, we talked about the roots and the tree. You need the roots of unconsciousness in order to have a sturdy tree of consciousness. They're both active. They don't go away. So, these roots have to be accepted. This is the problem, because we try to disassociate ourselves from any feelings of guiltiness, abandonment, betrayal, powerlessness, worthlessness, neediness, helplessness, hopelessness. But what we don't realize is we're keeping ourselves split. We keep fighting what wants to come home. Now, in this process, this area here I could run that up even higher, actually. This area here. This is where there are no characters and events. It's just you in the infinite void, in the infinite unconsciousness. So, after I showed you before, after we created the manufacturing center, core fears, interpreted feelings, created stories and beliefs, then we got to go live them out in order to wake up. So, as we went down through this, these big roots, that's why these sections are as wide as they are, because these are the main roots. There's 6 main roots, but there's actually 7. But I'll just talk about the 6 right now. I'll get to the 7th one later, and you'll understand why. Now, these are hard to get to because they're covered. They're covered by such intensity. That intensity is the rage, outrage and indignation and intolerance band. You gotta be really focused to get past your rage, outrage, and indignation, owning it. And then you come up to feel your powerlessness, worthlessness, neediness, helplessness, hopelessness, guiltiness. Without running from it, you empower yourself. And I'm going to get into that in just a second. Now, each of these main roots, they have their own root system. So they lead into layers of the onion. Fear, shame, blame, grief, anger, pain, guilt. We don't want to feel the anger. Now, anger is much less than rage or outrage or indignation. Anger is a layer, a softer layer. When you get into rage, you know it. And that rage is important to get you through this band into acknowledging and then owning these. So in this root system, any of these has their associations in fear, shame, blame, grief, anger, pain, guilt, and so on. But these are layers of distraction. They can keep you distracted for a long time. So you keep repeating the same old things over and over and over and over. This is what I'm saying. It took me a long time of going back and forth through here to get this. It's huge. And going past these layers results in a band that's protective. So protective. I don't want to feel powerless. Who does? I don't want to feel worthless. I don't want to feel neediness, helplessness, hopelessness, guiltiness. You don't want to feel those. But here's the problem. Remember before I went over the Mobius and defined it, plus and minus. So long as there's no obstructions in the center, this is equitably maintained. And then we used it also over a person meditating in order to demonstrate the difference of mind and emotion. This also represents this balloon. The difference of these two dualities. These two dualities exist at the same place. Now, if we were to take this symbol and just cut it right here, and we accentuate it, into something that we're all familiar with, a horseshoe or an omega symbol. All right, this horseshoe we magnetize, and when, we all know, you put north to north and south to south, they repel each other. These are our dualities. So unless we see our dualities and own them, as we try to own them and bring them together, the intensity gets really strong. But at one point, by standing there, embracing all the dualities, or one by one, all of a sudden, it flips. And then you have this, and you have the attraction. So this process happens in us with our dualities when we accept those 7 or 6 major emotions. Powerlessness, worthlessness, neediness, helplessness, hopelessness. When we take it and embrace it and not run from it, own it, all of a sudden it flips and it takes you through the eye of the needle, through the diamond, black and white diamond, and you're superposition again. That's you accepting the unconscious you. The tree finds the appreciation for the roots. That's what this is here, in taking something like worthlessness, powerlessness, neediness. Why do we got to do that? Well, remember, we were going through the quantum band. Going through the pain band, maybe you can stay a little while up here, and then your fear, pain, shame, blame, grief, whatever, throws you back out. Your unfinished business, your entanglements drop you back out. So the more you move back and forth through there, the more you start seeing and embracing these aspects of yourself, and the more you're able to allow this to be an ordinary experience here. You're cleaning the bridge of all obstructions of stories and belief systems. So, oops. An example of how to take one of these main routes into its quantum expansion, by owning it, is by tracking and labeling the arising emotions in you. We're all starting to feel now. I went over in another class the 26,000 year cycle and the two phases of the galaxy, one being separative and the other being integrative, and that creating the centrifuge effect. And that centrifuge effect, that centrifuge of time effect, is having us draw closer and closer to the quantum entanglement. So we're starting to experience so much intensity of our lives to confound the doer. The doer is being overwhelmed with so many things that it has to attend to, so many obligations, that it's finding that it can't keep up. So it's starting to act like it's in a cyclone and spinning and can't control anything. Yet, if one follows the cyclone, one moves to the point of surrender. And inside of the surrender, you move to the being, beingness, out of doership into beingness. So we're starting to see this manifest in the external world. As you allow that tempest, that spinning effect into yourself, it tends to start ripping down the constructs of the mind and the emotion about the management of the self. If you tear down the constructions, what you wind up with is the beer. And the being, the beer, resides in peace and stillness, even though everything, it seems like, around you is going into chaos. We're starting to see that more and more in the world. So, as you accept it, then it's not, you tend to not have as many experiences in your own life. Different people coming in and like that cartoon of the Tasmanian devil coming through your place and kind of disorganizing everything. The more you allow it into your inner being, then it's exposing the true self. It's ripping away the roots and constructs of the doer, the false self, and allowing you to abide in the true self. So as that's starting to happen into your world, of course, some of these feelings start to come up, and some of those feelings, like I was pointing out in that drawing, the powerlessness, worthlessness, neediness, they're coming up. It's huge. It's big. And so what do you do with that? Well, if you sit and track labeling the arising emotions, let's just take a few here. I feel stuck. Okay, own it. And confused. Own it. Don't run from it. It's the first truthful statement you've done to yourself, or you are allowed yourself in a while. I feel stuck and confused. Okay, keep going. Anything else? I feel like I'm not progressing or getting anywhere. or I'm not getting my goals accomplished. I'm feeling depressed and uninspired. I feel I'm losing or have lost my sense of direction and purpose.
These are examples?
Yes. I'm abbreviating. I feel I'm not measuring up to my or anybody else's standards. I'm just going to read these off. I feel I have no motivation or inspiration anymore. I feel I have no energy. I feel powerless to change my condition. We're getting somewhere. I feel a growing sense of uselessness of my efforts. In other words, every effort I try seems to be arising in failure. I feel I'm not up to the task. I don't measure up. I feel worthless because I cannot change this. I'm feeling neediness. I need help. I feel helpless because nothing seems to be able to help me. I feel hopeless. So you can see, you're moving down through these major roots. So as you label them and own them in your meditation, as you're maybe getting up in the morning, sometimes it's the clearest moment of the day for you to really feel your emotions. So in that moment, early in the morning or wherever is the best time for you, that you can take that space and really feel and communicate, write down, track these arising emotions as you own them. You're going to find something surprising. And that is, as you embrace them, as you refuse to run from them, as you own them, yes, these are me, rather than the knee-jerk reaction, as I was saying before, we want comfort, safety and security, recognition, validation, and control. So if you acknowledge those and own them. Yes, I am this also. Remember the Taoist material that we went over in previous evening sessions. The mind and the thoughts are yours, but they are not you. The emotions are yours, but they are not you. The body and its sensation is yours, but it is not you. So, there's another part of you. Then, as you stop running, then that magnet changes and it's hardest before accepting it. You resist it with everything you got until you can finally accept it. When you accept these roots, main roots, and these splinters, immediately you pass through here. Because you've disassembled the stories, you've also disassembled the belief systems. I am more than my belief. So by owning this, it's counterintuitive. So it takes you straight up into the quantum. And you get to feel, you get to experience your true love, the true you. Because you're not splitting yourself in denial, unconscious denial of these components, these roots of yourself. Instead, like we were talking about in the last session, these main roots, those 6 there, those are your cherubs. They're little children. They're innocent. And they don't have the wisdom that you do. So it's up to us to nurture them, give them education, validation, own them. They're trying to come home. So we have many cherubs. We are, as I was saying in the last evening session, we are the spokesperson of our inner tribe of all of these dualities. I made another graphic similar to the one I just covered over here, but this makes it simpler. These are the roots. Those 7 roots of separation consciousness. And you see, these 6, we need to untangle, disassemble, understand, and compassionately embrace, because where we're going is into the dissolution of physicality and management of the being and the self. We have to move into nothingness. That's why this is highlighted with the spaces here. How can you abide in nothingness if you got all these compunctions going on that are incomplete entanglements, under process entanglements going on inside of you? Yeah, if you haven't stood and welcomed back with compassion your own guiltiness and seen through it, how can you abide in nothingness? Same thing with powerlessness. In the powerlessness in any of these nesses, you're consciousness. So that you have the ability to communicate. And that gives you all the power you need. So inside of nothingness, you become everything. Your duality comes back because you're not fighting it. You're accepting it back. Your wholeness, guiltiness. Your innocence comes back. You're not fighting it. You're accepting it. So your innocence can freely move through the architecture of the black diamond. All the unfinished business within our unconsciousness. Powerlessness, we find that we are absolutely powerful in consciousness. So the dualities start coming back. So as I was showing you on the earlier graphic, moving through the quantum, moving through the pain band, we unzipped our dualities as we came into manifestation, into personalization, into individuation. But on the way back up, we've got to face all of these and re-zip them back in to ourself. So all of our emotional beliefs, stories, and tyrant, all of them are zipped back up into reunification as we accept it. So that's as far as I wanted to go tonight on this, and I want to give us a much longer meditation time because I think the time is rife for allowing ourselves the time, as much time as we can, inside of the quantum. Oh, by the way, these bands are moving into the quantum field. Questions?
Those like powerlessness, worthlessness, Do you process those one at a time or all of them at one time?
Oh, such a good question. At first, the kindness of the Creator.
Can you repeat the question?
The question arose about these powerlessness, worthlessness, neediness, helplessness, hopelessness, guiltiness, abandonment, betrayal. Do you process them one at a time or all at once? And this is such a good question. And the kindness of the Creator, the kindness of consciousness, is that it gives you time to work on one at a time. And as you get familiar with doing it with one, and you trust, because it's antithetical, it's counterintuitive, it's not what we're trained to do. We are pre-context to run away from the pain and the suffering and the fear. But if you go into it in consciousness and accept rage, outrage, indignation, intolerance, the resistance to feel the lessnesses, then you will go through the gate. You will feel the flip. You will feel the reintegration with that issue. Then Spirit seems to want to come back, and now that you've done it once, okay, we want to see if you can do it again to keep that muscle flexed, and then maybe they'll give you 2, 3, and when you're ready, they hit you with all of them. And this reminds me of that beautiful movie with Keanu Reeves, and a young Keanu Reeves, called The Little Buddha. And at the end, he's sitting under the tree, and you can see him in his meditative state. And he's got this beautiful auric field around him of serenity and peace. Yet there is an army coming at him, full bore, and they're firing their arrows and they're throwing their spears, and every arrow or spear that hits that field turns into petals, flower petals.
Like the Matrix.
With the bullets, yeah. And it's our consciousness coming back, attacking our stories, our belief systems, coming back to attack. Are you ready? Are you ready? Because they want to come back home. And if you have that compassion and that understanding and that broad view of consciousness of who and what you are. And remember, we said before, this whole Purusha Prakriti and the twist of the balloon sits right here. Each of us are at the core of all creation. So, all of what you can imagine in the past as being that which is out there in the darkness to get you is not. You're ready to then allow this to help you cleanse what was once a freaking jungle filled with tripwires and monsters. I remember in my younger days, last year, experiencing, monsters or creations from the unconscious that could come up and devour you. But that was not me understanding who and what I really am. And so, answering your question then, when you see yourself here with all of the foundations we've been going over these last couple of years and put them to this, the courage it takes to face rage, outrage, indignation, intolerance, and get into the lessnesses and take them into yourself is immense. And I hope this is helpful and understandable to not only you guys, but those of you out there who are paying attention to this material. Thank you for listening. So, yes?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you clarify, when you're talking about working on this stuff, it's not us as the doer that is getting in there with the shovel, because that's actually going to impede the process.
Yes, well, as we have been sharing, and I see the importance of, those who are watching this for the first time, we have been going over a process of defining the difference between consciousness and mind. So false self and true self. So when you are familiar with the fine line between consciousness and mind, and you can step fully or abide fully in consciousness, it's from consciousness, in the stillness, that all the communication begins to flow to you and starts to give you the clarity about working with all of these different areas within our unconsciousness. Without the quantum navigator, which is that communicator, yourself, that's still in Purusha, that hasn't separated, but abides under the tenet, assistance without interference. And so when you move into the stillness, into consciousness, that's you. And so it readily communicates. And it shares clarity. And it took me a long time to share this, to bring this out. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Ah, good. Thank you. Okay, if that's all, then we're going to take a quick break. And we got lots of time for meditation and communication afterwards.